What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Prospect Profiles. I'm Jude, that's Ethan, and today we're going to be breaking down Scoot Henderson, Ethan. But before we get into that, Ethan, there's a couple things that I want to talk about. First of all, there was some Spurs news today. The dreaded coin flip.
Ah.
The dreaded coin flip happened. The David Stern flip, the Adam Silver flip, and the Spurs lost to the Houston Rockets as they got heads or tails, whatever they picked or whatever they were assigned. So the Spurs officially have the third best odds in the NBA draft, which means there is a chance that we could fall to number 6. But if you want to look at the positive side, that's the lowest we can go. Unfortunately, we can't guarantee the top 5, which would have been cool. Or actually, I think, no, I'm wrong on that. Top 5 is you're guaranteed top 5 if you're number 1. Number 2 is you can get as low as 6. Number 3 is you can get low as 7. So actually, that's where the Spurs are at. But that was some news. Unfortunate, but we can't control it. Hopefully, we, the pinball balls or the ping pong balls, whatever you call them, drop in the at least in the top 5 or the top 3 or the top 2 specifically as we'll get into this prospect profile. But also want to give a shout out to you guys for all the support recently. We just reached 900 subs, which we truly appreciate. And y'all gave us a ton of love on the San Antonio Spurs offseason preview video, which we also appreciated. But enough of that, Ethan. Let's get straight into Scoot Henderson here. Obviously, going into this season, if there wasn't a Victor Wembanyama, he would have been the number 1 prospect on the board all year. I know there's a lot of talk also about Brandon Miller potentially jumping him, and maybe there's some people that hear that and they're like, no, it'd be Brandon Miller. But with the way that Scoot Henderson has played in the G League for 2 years, playing pro basketball since he was 17 years old, and if there wasn't, really kind of the Wembanyama hype came a little bit later when there were those videos with him and Rudy Gobert and stuff back in the day. So, like I said, it seemed like he was the guy you were hearing more about. And then, of course, whenever you got a couple highlights of Victor, that's when it was automatic that he was going to be the number 1 guy. But still, this is a very top tier prospect, Ethan, is what I'm trying to get here. A better version when it comes to the G League Ignite of Jalen Green. I think a lot of scouts would argue.
I would agree with that. A definite, incredibly talented consolation prize if you get that number 2 overall pick. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama, who's everybody is wanting. But even in a head-up situation, we saw Scoot go against Victor, and sure, Victor was a 10, but Scoot was at 9.5. Like, he was very impressive as well, and he took that kind of personally. It felt like, and what he said post game and pre game, and they were talking about each other. I think it's going to be a rivalry that will last the rest of the league. And when you just think about the NBA in general, I know right now there's a lot of really talented wings, so maybe that's why you want to go with a Thompson twin or a Brandon Miller at 2. But it's a guard-dominated league, and if you have an incredibly talented guard, that's going to bring you a long way. Think of Steph Curry, John Morant, Trae Young, even if you want to go that route. I know he's struggling right now, but you get the point. And Scoot Henderson, at how old is he? 18 or 19?
19 right now.
19 right now. Just
turned
19?
19 in February.
I mean, this guy has so much room to grow, but he's already so talented. Like, all of his skills are there, they're just raw. So if he can continue to develop them and get them more consistent, then the ceiling is unlimited for this guy because he's already got a man's body, Jude. He's already ripped to shreds. He's strong. He can finish at the rim with either hand. He's got a really solid handle. He's averaging 18 points a game, 5 boards, and 7 assists in the G League, playing against grown men. Mind you, not
pro
playing against
basketball,
scrubs.
one of the better pro basketball leagues in the world, and he's like a top 5 league, and he's 17 through 19 years old. That's where he was playing. He played his senior year of high school when he should have been playing that. He was playing in the G League, and his freshman year when obviously there's not that giant of a gap between like the better college basketball leagues in the G League, but still. You're not going to see Kenneth Faried in the SEC. Obviously, it's washed Kenneth Faried, but still, you get my point here.
And more importantly, he's getting the development and coaching staff and training staff of an NBA level team.
Playing
already.
With John Jenkins.
Yes.
Like, that's totally, like, you're just not going to get that at Kentucky.
Being exposed to adults that can teach him how to be a professional already at this age. He's not going to come in with a lot of worries about, maybe they cater to him too much or whatever it may be. And that's only guesswork by myself, but that's what I would assume is part of the, the positives of going to the G League as opposed to going to college. And if you want to look at some of his negatives, he's only shooting 43% from the field, 27% from three.
We'll dive
Like I
into that.
said, I mean, that's a little inconsistency there, but it's not like he's making bad decisions in my eyes, Jude. I've watched
And
the
when you
film.
look at the tape, yeah, that's sometimes where stats can lie to you a little bit.
Yeah.
He's definitely struggled shooting this year, and it seems like he's taken a step back from last year, and at least just from his high school tape and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
at the same time, when you look at the tape, his shot does not look bad. First of all, the mid range shot is there,
Yeah.
and the rotation it's there. It just wasn't falling as much this year.
He draws a lot of comparisons to other athletic guards. For me, he's more of a John Wall than a Russell Westbrook. John Wall averaged 16, 7, and 4 in Kentucky in
Speaking of
college.
Kentucky,
Speaking,
hey, that is an NBA machine. I made that comment earlier. I just meant like you're not gonna have former NBA vets on a college roster.
yes, yes, but his play style does remind me a lot of John Wall in the sense that
Hmm.
they are extremely explosive, incredibly quick first step. They can get to the paint faster than anybody else I've seen at their age, in my eyes. Other than
Yeah.
maybe John Morant, who's kind of a freak athlete as well. But they can finish, like I said, with either hand. And to me, a lot of the critics are saying that recently you spoke about his shooting slump. He's maybe kind of settled, not getting to the rim as often as he could. And to me, I see that less of him settling as more of him trying to develop the rest of his skill set because he's kind of focused more so on coming off
It's a unique
screens.
opportunity too, because you're in the G League.
The games don't necessarily matter. I mean, I know you
Right.
want to win, you're competing,
But
but
you're
he's
also on
trying to
Ignite.
get better.
Like
Yeah,
you're not even on like an affiliate of like an
yes.
NBA team.
He's
Like
there to get better. And so
right.
as he is quote unquote settled for outside
Like
shots
he's
or whatever,
employed by the NBA technically. I never
yes,
thought about that until right
literally
now.
employed by the NBA. But as he's settled, he's developed or shown more skill set, coming off screens, pulling up from 15, 17 feet, getting to that elbow area. He has a floater game. And sure, maybe these shots aren't
Hmm.
falling at as high of a clip, but I'm glad he's getting these misses out of the way and trying to fine tune this skill set because when he comes into the NBA, he'll already be head and shoulders above where John Wall and where Russell Westbrook were at his age. Because when
Yeah.
they came into the league, they had no jump shot. I know John Wall was shooting at better efficiency in college, but he was really just getting to the
Yeah.
rim. Like there was no mid range pull up game. Russell Westbrook, it took him 3 years to get that mid range
Yeah.
pull up game.
And he
Um,
already has that.
he already has that, or at least he's taking them and he's
Much more
working on
consistently. It's much more consistent than his 3-point shot, that's for sure. Like
100%.
I can't tell you how many times when I was watching the tape like that there was just a step back mid-range pull up.
Yeah,
Numerous
absolutely.
numerous times. Yeah.
It's wonderful to see, and most importantly to me, the biggest like positive about his game is his playmaking.
Yeah.
Trey Jones, obviously a wonderful playmaker, a facilitator, a field general. Scoot Henderson has that similar ability to just see the entire floor. But where he's better
Mhm.
than Trey is that he's way more explosive and he's going to draw more attention. So especially coming off of pick and roll situations, he can drop it off, wrap around passes, kick to the weak side corner. Um, Very
Yeah.
similar to how Russell Westbrook was able to operate in Oklahoma City with Steven Adams and Carmelo Anthony and Paul George, whoever it was on that weak side. Just able to feed his teammates. And I think he kind of, similarly to John Morant, feeds off of that. So I don't think we have to worry about him being a quote unquote ball hog. I don't think that's a part of his game. I think he would really enjoy feeding Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Zach Collins, whoever it is on the team. Um, and hopefully would be a really solid fit next to those dudes, especially at 19 years old.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely want to dive into all that, Ethan. But I got a whole bag of notes here that I took after
Take them.
watching a bunch of tape on it. And so I did. John Wall is that's a great comparison as well. Here's what I came up with: a mix of John Morant and Russell Westbrook. Basically, the handle and like the acrobatics of Ja with
Mm-hmm.
the physicality of Russ. Um,
It's
and
fair.
and I know that like I'm not saying that he's going to necessarily like ascend to the heights of both of those guys. You just never know with these prospects. Like there's just guys flop sometimes,
Style wise is what you
right?
mean.
Exactly. Right. And when you talk about like I mean the movement in midair, that's what I mean like when it comes to the acrobatics and then the physicality, it's just I mean being mean, we talked there's a lot of um what's the word? there was just a lot of hullabaloo about the picture of him where it was like Scoot looks like a linebacker, and it was somebody who was like front row and took a picture of him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how he plays and that's how he is driving to the rim. The two like adjectives that I wrote down when I was watching that is explosive and aggressive.
Yeah.
He likes to attack guys too. He doesn't he's relentless. Like he's never gonna, like when you're guarding him and he has the ball in his hands, maybe if he's, if there's somebody else working, like City Sissoko's on this G League Ignite team, if he was working in a pick and roll, then maybe you could get Scoot, where he's just kind of trailing along the perimeter on the 3-point line. But usually he's doing something. He's either cutting. There were some little cuts in there. Obviously he has the ball so much, but there were some little nuggets of off ball movement that I saw from him. But once again, going back to the attacking, like when he has the ball in his hands, you're not like, you can't take any breaks because he's either going to beat you off the dribble, or if you're in front of him, like, and you are like, trying to check him a little bit, then he's just going to like try to bulldoze through you. Yeah. So you're going to have to deal with him with the finesse or with the hammer, if you will, regardless.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right about those shoulders. He throws his shoulders into your chest, but he can contort his body just like Ja Morant, and really finish with either hand, which is just unheard of at his age already.
Yeah. Another thing I wrote down is he's a poster finder. He loves to dunk on people. That's one thing, which is another, kind of jaw trait, if you will, there. And Russ, too. That's kind of why I put both of them together. Another thing I wrote down, we talked about this earlier, pull up is clean off the dribble. Even from the 3-point land, like if you go and watch the tape, like that's where pull up jumpers in the mid range and from 3, like that's what I saw the most of. Really, when I think about it, I saw there's more pull-up jumpers from 3 than there are catch and shoot, which is probably why the percentage is down when I'm
probably
remembering the tape. But I did also write down that it still shows promise. There were a couple catch and shoot threes in there, and then because of the fact that we saw more of the off of the dribble stuff, like those shots don't look bad. Like they're swishes, like they're going in like that. Like, even to an extent too, it might be like what was Luka's percentage this year? I know that's something I'm pulling out of thin air. Yeah, but I'm sure it was in the 30s.
Is it definitely the 30s?
Yeah. Right, and we know that Luka is a really good shooter. I'm not saying that that's the same thing with Scoot Henderson. I'm just saying that he's a better shooter from 3 than 27%. At least from what I've seen on the tape. Like he does not have a broken shot. That's for
very
sure.
Smooth.
That's what I would say. Like the rotation is fine. Yes, maybe if we're just talking about how many went in and how many didn't go in, but it's like, it's different than, I don't know, like we're watching rookie Kawhi shoot and he has a bad percentage. You know what I'm saying? Or San Diego State Kawhi, like something like that. Or Jeremy Sohan, good gosh. And he ended up ending around like 22%. There's a very big difference between both of their jump shots on tape. But yeah, acrobatics, I wrote this down too. Acrobatics translate to playmaking. That ties into what you were saying about the wraparound passes, the dump offs, all that type of stuff. He can contort his body, whether it's with layups or whether it's with playmaking. His court vision, like you said, I mean, that's something that jumps out on tape when you're watching him. And it really eye pops when he's in the pick and roll. I can't tell you how many, like when he's coming off a pick and roll, so many shooters in the corners that you mentioned that he found, so the fact that he's able to kind of see the court and like, hey, even though I'm on the right elbow right now, there's a dude wide open in the left wing. And, I've driven enough and he's like off the dribble when he's making the pass too. So he's already causing the defender who was, would have been guarding the dude who was on the 3 to like try to slide towards the paint because he thinks that Scoot's driving in for a layup. But because of that penetration, he's able to, because of the penetration, that leaves the shooter open in the left corner. But also like the passes that he was making in this exact play I'm thinking of, it's like off the dribble and it's one hand just swinging it, as hard as he can to the left corner. And it's like, not everybody can do that. That's just one breakdown of like one highlight play that sticks out in my mind playmaking wise. But, I think it encapsulates a lot of his strengths.
For sure. And in terms of play style, he fits with the Spurs so perfectly.
Yes, when I get into that too.
I mean, think about Trey Jones fits perfectly, yes. But imagine if Trey Jones was an uber athlete that was a scoring threat and could finish at the rim.
Right. Dude,
with a slam.
so earlier you were talking about how I forget you. Well, you were talking about Ja, but when I was watching Scoot Henderson and I was thinking about his fit with the Spurs, it was very similar to the Grizzlies. That's what I think of because what you got
Mm,
Desmond Bain and you got Dylan Brooks off the and obviously I would say that Keldon and Devin are like combined like a better shooting percentage than those two because Dylan Brooks can be off sometimes, but still I think you can see the similarities between like that trio. If you have
yeah.
Scoot, Keldon, and Devin, and like a Ja, Dylan Brooks, and a Desmond Bain, all guys who can shoot. Obviously, Devin's a little bit more saucy than either of those guys, but and then more skinny than
Yeah.
those guys. But you get what I'm saying. They could play off of Scoot Henderson so well, like that would increase Keldon's percentage. Like we talk about his percentage falling off. I made the clip we did today on Keldon Johnson being the Spurs MVP. And it's like if he had Scoot Henderson on his team, I don't really think it would matter if he improved his jump shot. I just think naturally with Scoot being on the team, he'd get so many more open looks that his
Yeah.
percentage would go up.
I mean, because Trey Jones, I keep going back to Trey Jones because he's our starting point guard right
Right.
now, and such an incredible playmaker and facilitator. But he doesn't draw two. He can't draw two because why would you? He's shorter than Scoot, probably, or maybe about the same height as Scoot, and not nearly as strong. Can't finish nearly as well. Doesn't have a pull up
Yeah.
game. Like I love Trey Jones to death, and I think as a backup point guard, a backup to Scoot Henderson, and kind
Dude,
of a
that's what I'm
mentor.
saying, dude. We're like if we get Scoot, we're basically the Grizzlies. Like
Like we're the
we're,
nice
we're
Grizzlies.
not exactly the same. Yeah, we're the nice Grizzlies.
We're the nice Grizzlies. That's like,
Yeah.
I like that comparison a lot.
Because you got Trey Jones off the bench too,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and then it's a very similar build if you get Scoot.
The one thing I think that Scoot Henderson might have over John Morant though is defense. Um,
Interesting. Yeah,
I
yeah.
I
That it's
don't
kind of
think
funny you mentioned that because I was noticing sometimes how Ja wasn't trying as much in that Lakers game.
yeah, and I don't think John Morant just he doesn't have
He's
the
not
physical
bad.
tools
Yeah,
to be a great defensive player. And I don't think Scoot Henderson's an all defensive like first or second team guy. He's not a DeJounte to me. Because I think for one, he'll have so much on his plate offensively.
yeah,
But he is short. He has, he has a really good wingspan, really, big hands. But I think he'll be like a free safety type defender, playing the passing lanes. He'll rack up steals, but he's not necessarily going to slap the floor and Gary Payton you to death, where you literally
yeah.
can't get past him. I don't think that he'll have that kind of ceiling. I think he'll be formidable because he is so strong and has
Hmm.
such a great wingspan. But he'll be more of a free safety in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And that's kind of the last little bullet points I have here are all on his defense. And so what I wrote down, the first thing I wrote down was active, aware defender when
Hmm.
locked in. And the games that I watched this year of Scoot, it was kind of some bad ones actually, which is kind of nice though because I'm glad I got to see that because all the tape is all the good stuff
Highlights, yeah.
because that's the majority of what it was for the season. But there were a couple games I watched this year and it was just taking plays off. Like it was like you said with Ja, like it had nothing to do with his physical ability because when you look at the highlights on defense, I mean, like
When he wants to lock up, he locks
he's
up.
super active. Like there's this one highlight where he's like holding this dude who's cutting towards the rim. Basically, he's not holding him. That would be a foul. But like it's like he's locked to him, while he's cutting to the rim, and they're like trying to throw like a dump pass, like like a rainbow pass kind of that like drops in like over a couple defenders, and Scoot's like watching that the whole time and goes up and one hands it and just grabs it, and then it's a transition fast break. Like, so he's definitely, like you said, like when he's paying attention, he's locked in, like he's going to make some plays that are highlights.
Mhm.
But it's just sometimes it was just like he'd take possessions off and he'd be lost. But it seemed like it was all mental. Like it was either like he just wasn't locked in or like he just like, I don't know. He just short circuited for a second because he's 18. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
yeah,
he just got distracted for a possession, and wasn't, all in like all the time, which I feel like as a young kid in the G League, that just feels like that's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's bound to happen. And
Just because of the age, nothing else. Um, but I also wrote down that he's not scared in the post on defense. That was something I
mm,
noticed, and that ties in to just his physicality that we've been talking about. And it was against, I forget who it was against. It was like against like the Vipers or something. But the point is, it was a bigger defender on him, and he like posted him up used his strength, even though he was, much out-heighted. I know that's not the best vocabulary, but the dude was a lot taller than him. But he checked him using his physicality, and he was able to force a miss. So I like to see that too. Like you said, he puts his hands in passing/dribble lanes, which is kind of that free safety, like roaming thing that you were talking about. I saw a lot of that times when there were like jumbles and there'd be people dribbling towards the paint. He'd put his hand in there and he'd either get the steal or tip it to somebody else, get like a half steal, whatever that's called. Maybe that's still a steal. I don't know. Regardless, though, the point is he has a lot of deflections in passing lanes. And like you said, he's not somebody who's necessarily like he can hold his own, but he's not going to, slap the floor and clap it, like you said, when he's trying to defend somebody. But he can create turnovers at the same time. And then the last thing that I had written down, and this is just overall, his biggest areas of improvement: shooting, even though I still think he has a good shot, just get that percentage up. Mental consistency is basically what it was. Because even when he's had his errors on offense or two, it's just like it's like his brain was turned off for a second, like a careless turnover or, just taking the plays off, just not necessarily in the game IQ wise. But when he is, he's going to do great stuff. But I feel like that, like criticism, Ethan, it just ties into his age.
Probably. And he's probably a little bit bored too.
Yeah. That's another good point in the G League.
I mean, with Pop, there's no excuses. Like once he gets to the league, no excuses. But I mean, at this point, I feel like a lot of those guys are.
And they shut him down too. That's a really good perspective.
Yeah.
Well, that's really all I had on him there, Ethan.
Yeah, I think you summarized it pretty well. Terrific number 2 option. I think the Spurs should take him at 2 if we do fall to 2. I have nothing against the Thompson twins or Brandon Miller, but I just think team need. We need a point guard. I got an explosive point guard because we already kind of have our wings with Sohan, Keldon, and Devin. Sure, maybe eventually they would be an upgrade over one of those 3 guys, but at this point, having Scoot next to our other 3 cornerstones would fit better.
And, a lot of people may question this, like, okay, but what about Blake, right? He's kind of, I guess, somebody we haven't talked about in all this. But the thing that I would say is from what we saw this year, still needs some development. Stick him in the G League for another year. You've got one more year on the Trey Jones qualifying offer, so that totally works out. And then if somebody gets hurt, call up Blake. He can get that experience. If nobody gets hurt and you just have like the perfect season, because it feels like eventually one of them is going to take a day off just with the way that the Spurs, rest people. Then you've got Trey Jones and Scoot Henderson the whole year. So that's where I think, so if you want to really go into the future, you could say if this happens, this may be the end of Trey, but you never know because maybe Blake doesn't work out too.
Knock on wood, you never do know.
Right. So Spurs, the new nice Grizzlies, if they draft Scoot Henderson.
The nice Grizzlies plus Zach Collins.
plus mean Zach Collins.
Ooh,
yes.
The enforcer.
Well, no, I guess plus Zach Collins and Sohan.
Oh, yeah. Dennis Rodman and Bill Laimbeer. The future bad boy Pistons. And we just if we draft him, we got our Isaiah Thomas.
I'm crying. I love it. Keldon and Devin are just
Joe Dumars and
Joe Dumars's.
Who's the Mark Aguirre?
There you go. Who's Mark Aguirre?
Keldon.
Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah, Devin's Joe. Devin's definitely Joe. I kind of like that actually. That's not a bad.
We've had a lot of fun little comparisons in today's video.
As many as we could possibly fit into one.
Yep. Hopefully, our next comparison that we make for the Spurs roster with who we draft is not someone from number 7.
Don't even say it, Jude.
I was trying so hard to make that work.
Don't even say it, Jude.
We appreciate y'all for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to like and subscribe. We've really appreciated that lately. If you want to stay updated with the show and you're new, you can watch the show on Twitter at SSPN on YT. That's where we've been posting all the clips and all that stuff. You can also follow me at Jude McLaren and Ethan at Ethan_Quintero. We retweet all of it, so that's your way to stay updated. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Go Spurs, go.